It's another week here on Bophelong, the show where ordinary people achieve the extraordinary despite whatever obstacles they face. So join me, Refiel Wemwilwa, over the next half hour as we chronicle the lives of two very different but similar people in the sporting fraternity. Welcome to the show. In 1995, an Eastern Cape English teacher did the unthinkable, swapping the chalkboard for boxing gloves. Mbali Zantsi was only 25 years old when she walked into a field no other South African woman would dare to. Nearly 2 decades on, she is dubbed the Dawn Queen of her time as one of the country's very first female boxing promoters.
She is the only woman promoter in South African boxing, and she was also the first to get a television date, live tournament for a South African title fight. And now she's done it again.
At the forefront of women's boxing promoting has been Mbali Zantsi.
She has fought some of the best, opponents, as in women and men, in the promoting life. As a promoter, I think she has done very well, and I'm happy that we got somebody like Mbali having to have even encouraged a lot of young girls who are there now, who are superstars, who are world champions.
She's a familiar face to boxing lovers in South Africa. Mbali Zantsi continues to make history in the sport. Her ambitions have gone far beyond those of any other in the field. But who is Mbali Zantsi?
I'm actually from Port Elizabeth, and our home village is Paddy. I grew up in Port Elizabeth. I grew up as a tomboy. I have makeups and all this now. It may not look like that, but then I grew up as a tomboy. I used to love to play with boys, play soccer and ride bicycles, and my parents were fine with that. And then we would play your volleyball at school, and I was playing netball, and I was fairly involved in athletics. Then I would be your captain in most of the sporting codes that I would partake in, which I guess that showed the level of the love and the passion that I had for sport, and I always loved to be there on the forefront.
She grew acting like a boy. She just loved sport. She would call some friends and they would run into the house and clean up as quickly as they could, and we would get there and find the house clean.
A natural leader, Mbali never walked away from a challenge.
I think I've always loved to travel the road less traveled, and I played that role of being a motivator and loved to inspire other kids or students, if you like, and that were in my team, of course, and then that spread, because as I grew, then I would advance. I would change that to benefit not only myself but my country. So that's how I looked at life.
With a supportive family, as a teenager, she took advantage of all opportunities that came her way.
She loved playing netball, even at home, but what she really loved was modeling. She was really fond of it.
In the early 90s, reality kicked in. The teenager had to make a life-altering decision.
After varsity, I taught. Of course, I was teaching English.
But Mbali couldn't help but feel like she hadn't reached her full potential. She volunteered to head extramural activities at the school she was working for.
That's where I realized my potential in being able to push students to do their best. Because most of the sporting codes that we were involved in, our students would ace them. We would bring your provincial colors, it was always like that, because they were so determined, they were so fit. But that's one thing. And then I realized that if you're passionate about anything, there's nothing that can stop you from achieving whatever goal that you want. So from there, I decided I'm going back to school to further my studies.
She packed her bags and headed off to pursue a new career. Inevitably, Mbali found herself in sport once again. This time, it was a complete game changer.
My sister was involved in boxing, so she kind of not recruited me as such, but she would take me with when she goes to boxing tournaments. And I later became a ring girl, you know, the ones with the boards, you know, round number 1, round number 2. Because maybe I had the looks, and obviously you would have to wear the shorts and the jogger shorts. So being in the arena and feeling that atmosphere, you kind of get hooked. I say this all the time. It's more like a drug. Once you get hooked, you can't get out. It's very difficult to get out of that. So I guess that is where it all started. That was the root. It was planted. So I loved the boxing. I followed boxing. I followed the boxers, your Welcome Nitas of the time, your Vianney Nenes, you know, your Matlalas and your Dingan Tobelas. So I followed their story. I would watch on TV. I would be in the tournaments. Sometimes when I have to be the ring girl.
Little did she know of what lay ahead.
I came across Mr. Mzimunguni, who is one of the renowned promoters in the country. He had a light stroke recently, but then he's coming around nicely. God is great. And Mr. Mnguni basically would be the person that really brought me into the knowledge, the know-how, the tricks of the trade in terms of boxing. Because what I said to him, because I picked up that most of his boxers were leaving his stable, not because he was not a good manager, not because he was not doing everything he can or he could in terms of being a manager and a promoter and a trainer, and he was wearing the 3 caps at the time, even though now it's not allowed that you wear the 3 caps, you become the promoter, the trainer, and because you tend to be biased towards your own boxers. Now Mr. Mnguni's boxers were leaving his stable because I guess there was that father-son kind of a relationship where they could not approach him to say, this is what we need. They would be scared of him. But then I brought this notion of saying, look, coming from the background of the education, of course, to say, look, these are the people that you need. You cannot work in a vacuum. Then I introduced this thing of saying, look, let me be the go-between. Let me be the buffer between yourself and the boxers. Because now your boxers, good boxers for that matter, are leaving. It's not like other promoters are poaching them, but the boxers would leave because they cannot approach you. So I came in, I listened to the boxers, I interacted with them, I understood their language, because coming from the background of being a tomboy, now it became easy for me to understand them and to mix, and for them to be comfortable with me, to say we can talk to her and she can relay our problems and then they can be solved. Then that's how I started.
Mbali made it her mission to master the art of boxing from an expert perspective. Assisting veteran boxing promoter Mzinguni, she ended up in places she could only dream of.
I would be behind the scenes. I would be the one running around like a headless chicken and making sure that this is done, that is done, that is done, and you conform with whatever is needed. I even had the international exposure because I would go to London, I would go to your Sheffields, I would go to New York, again get to meet with your Don Kings, you know, that's the last man in boxing. And then I was like, but if I can do this for someone else, what is stopping me from because I've learned the ropes, what is stopping me from doing this?
Share your thoughts, opinions and stories with us. Who knows, we might be profiling you in the near future. Our email address again is bophelong@sabc.co.za. When we return, how did this Port Elizabeth-born woman keep her head high after losing her pillar of strength on the eve of the pinnacle of her career? We're back with more with Mbali Zantsi after this.
Of South Sudan and Sudan have confirmed their commitment to the cooperation agreement signed in September 2012.
As a panel, we are very pleased indeed with the position taken by both governments to implement whatever is outstanding.
About 100 bodies have been retrieved from a shipwreck off the coast of Libya. The boat carrying up to 200 migrants sank 1 kilometer from the Libyan coast.
In recent months, many boats have been wrecked as thousands of migrants, mainly from sub-Saharan Africa, have crowded into poorly made vessels in an effort to reach Italian shores.
That's PN News every day, 3 to 5:30 p.m.
Shrien Dewani has pleaded not guilty to murdering his wife. In November 2010, Dewani's murder trial finally got underway. It's taken South African authorities more than 3 years to get him into the dock.
Not guilty of robbing, kidnapping and murdering his wife. This is how Shrien Dewani pleaded before Deputy Cape Judge President Jeanette Traverso.
Why did these two men need even a gun to scare a little girl like that? Those are the questions that runs around our head.
Your World, weekdays at 9 p.m.
A grandmother in Hector Spruit in Mpumalanga has made an impassioned plea for her 2 grandchildren.
13-year-old Tulani Dlamini and 21-year-old Hlonipile Filani were taken
away by a stranger who allegedly promised them better education in England. But the two recently called their grandmother. They told her they're in Malawi.
It's 100 years since the start of the Great War, and today 14 South African World War I heroes, all recipients of the Victoria Cross, were honoured.
The Ring of Memory carries the names of 600,000 soldiers who died in the region.
Primetime News, daily at 6 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back, you're tuned to Bophelong. In a little while, we'll meet the man from a secluded Limpopo village who is now hailed as one of the best physiques on the continent. But first, let's hear more about a woman who is in the business of grooming champions and making dreams come true. But it doesn't just end there. This Jack, or rather Jacqueline of all trades, gained international recognition, even rubbing shoulders with the likes of veteran American boxing promoter Don King.
I had the blessings from Mzimgudi, the one that I was working with. I had the blessings from your Cedric Krushners, who are your international promoters in London, and from Don King himself. And then they wrote letters to say they're supporting that initiative.
After nearly a decade, Mbali Zansi became a fully fledged licensed boxing promoter. But this wasn't her benchmark. She wanted to leave a lasting legacy in the fraternity.
There were no female boxers at the time, and I guess that's one of the things that made it easy for me to be accepted into this circle of boxers, because most of the people were like, no, it's never going to work. You know, it's a long shot. There's no female boxers, because when I came in, I was like, look, there are boys that are fighting, and I'm able to put fights together. But now, what I can do, I want to introduce and bring girls. And everybody was fine. Rodney Berman was fine with me. Even Branko Milenkovic was fine with me. No one was having a problem, because I was no competition.
She introduced female boxing in South Africa, a concept that changed the face of boxing forever.
You also famous for promoting women-only events. I mean, the judges, the referees, the ring girls, obviously, but women-only? Is that even feasible in this country?
And from Tanzania, Noni Tenge.
By 2013, Mbali had successfully hosted several boxing tournaments. But in September, she was ready to host the largest one yet. As she prepared for the women's boxing tournament in Pretoria, her mother, the biggest supporter of her career, came down from the Eastern Cape to give her emotional confidence.
Her mom would say, I'm going to the boxing match with Mbali. I didn't understand it, but I eventually accepted it.
On the morning of the tournament, Mbali received devastating news. Her mother had died in the Pretoria hotel room. Traumatic as that was, she pulled herself together and organized a spectacular event.
Mbali engimaziyo is like, she's the one who put the spirit in women's boxing. so far she's the one engimaziyo okwi-boxing oyithandayo i-boxing, who's always there for women boxing, who's always there ekhulumela amantombazana. And she's very powerful. Uyazazi story sakhe, uyazazi indaba zakhe, and she knows the sports in and out. So she's unique, she's different, because she like these days izinto eziningi njengakwi-boxing you don't find a lot of women. So yena she was there, wahlala kwi-boxing. She was the first promoter yabo mama, and so far angakaboni any promoter engathi yasondela to compete with her.
We are having a problem. Only having Mbali Zanzi there. Mbali Zanzi is a promoter. She promoted a lot of female boxers, and she's the only one that taking care of female boxers, and that's the problem. If we can have more, and they do have sponsorship, I think boxing female will grow in this country.
If you find it in your corner, or you find it in you that you have the love of the sport, not necessarily boxing, go for it. If you're passionate about anything, nothing can stop you. But then you must understand that you cannot work in a vacuum. You first have to seek those people that have gone there before you, get the necessary experience and the know-how, and then you go for it. And then get your assistance as you go along. You will stumble and fall, but then it's a tough world.
Stumble and fall she did, but Mbali Zanzi managed to rise against adversity.
Stay with us, because Arnold Schwarzenegger waseMzansi is up next.
Over 20 years now, South Africa has just been one big construction site, building houses.
This is the only country in the world that provides free housing. The government has done very well in this particular area.
What are the challenges facing human settlements?
Most of the people who move into urban centers are looking for jobs, basically, and that increases the pressure in that particular area. We know exactly what needs to be done where and how it should be done.
They were also building houses for married staff, and you had the married quarters and the hostels. And all of that stopped. What happened?
Nothing has stopped, Mr. Mateza. We cannot solve the housing problems on our own in this country. We cannot wait for government as well.
It's a joint venture, if I were to put it like that, between the public sector and the private sector, particularly in the area of mines.
That's Rights and Recourse, Sundays 2 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. For Bophelong Mfumadi, having a domestic worker as a mother encouraged him to aim for only the best in life. His passion and drive led him to the international stages of Italy, strutting his masculine build, competing with contestants from all over the world.
It's a contest to showcase the best bodies in the world. Italy set the precedent by hosting the coveted International Bodybuilding Federation competition in 2014, bringing fitness fanatics from all over the world under one roof. For Bophelong Mfumadi, this was an opportunity he just couldn't let slip.
His dreams was to become a sports star, whether in rugby or whether in bodybuilder. So now he went to bodybuilder, and the challenge is, in his sports, he doesn't have sponsors. That's the biggest challenge, because the diet himself, you have to see that he buys diet for himself. He paid gym for himself, trips he found himself.
Bophelong Mfumadi practically lives in the gym. This 35-year-old takes fitness fanatics to a whole new level, even making it to Africa's Magazine's list of fittest men on the continent.
It was a struggle because I didn't have a sponsorship, so I had to raise funds through Facebook and People there and there will pledge their 100 rands, and ultimately I raised my funds up to 50,000, and off I went to Italy.
It was like a joke to me if he says he was going overseas, because I don't know to go overseas. I think I know to go Limpopo and come back, and send Abby Limpopo and come back. I never think Abby can cross the seas and go overseas. No, didn't.
This was a dream come true. Absalom was now ready to show off what he had worked so hard to achieve.
I eventually said, you know what, June 2008, I'm starting with my preparation. And thereon, there was no turning back. That's when I went to my fridge and I removed all the fatty stuff, the margarine, or the dairy, you know, the cheese. I was like, you know what, I don't want to deal with this thing. I want to transform my body. And I started reading a lot. You know, I made Google my morning breakfast. Every morning I used to read. I used to watch the YouTube of this Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I really look up to, the Ronnie Coleman of this world, how they step on the stage and how they prepare, their way of living. So all those things started motivating me. So I didn't need any other person to motivate me. I had to realize that, you know what, the weight that I'm carrying, first thing, my health is at risk.
Now on the world stage, Absalom's new sculptured physique was on display.
They kept on calling my name, you know, to compare me with the other guys. And I knew then that, you know what, I have to fight it.
After the final call to walk the ramp, he made it, taking the 5th position in the world.
It was a great experience, and then competing with people from about over 20 countries. You know, and that show, I mean, I've never been overseas as well. Italy is a beautiful country. And when we stepped on the stage that day, I knew that I cannot do anything less than top 6. I need to place top 6.
One of my best success in terms of conditioning an athlete. And it's quite amazing of how he turned up.
It was just amazing. I couldn't, I actually cried when I see him on the stage, like showing up his muscles and everything. Everybody was like, the eyes on him. It was just a great opportunity, and I just thought it's a way forward. I just thought, my brother.
Amazing story indeed. Determination is without a doubt the breeding ground of success, and our stories today clearly demonstrate the power of just one dream fueled by passion. Congratulations to Absalom Mfumadi. South Africa's sporting industry prides itself through your achievements and of course those of Mbali Zanzi's.
Absalom Mfumadi was raised in Mudurini village in Limpopo.
I was doing the domestic work, and Abby was born like Alexander. As I was working. Then after that, I have to send Abby homeland, which is far Limpopo, Louis-Trichardt. It was very much difficult because as the father died, Abby was 3 years old. He was still at the crash. From there, he have to start schooling. As I was staying with the people I'm working for, there was no accommodation for Abby. I had to send Abby homeland, where my grandmother was.
The mother of 3 did her best to make ends meet, but the political tensions of the 80s made it even harder for her to see her children.
Sure, it was tough because then my mom was the only person working. My brother was still at school and my sister was still at school. So, you know, at that time, Joburg to Venda was a long distance. So my mom will send groceries once in, say, 2 months and so forth. And I will get to speak to her through a family friend who used to work in town. So the communication was in there.
It was very difficult to apart with Abby. Abby was like my last born and the only baby after his brother was grown up, and I wanted to raise him myself. I didn't want to send somebody to raise him, but as it was difficult for me to stay with him and to work at the same time, so it forced me to send Abby home to apart with him.
As a domestic worker, Betty Mfumadi tried her best to ensure a better life for her children. After the first democratic elections in 1994, she brought Absalom to Johannesburg, enrolling him at a school that would open doors for a better future.
As we were struggling all this time, the brother is the one who helped me a lot with Abi, because now the brother and the sister of Abi, they were moved from homeland to come to look for studying and a job to work to help me. So there was nobody else to stay with Abi at home. So it forced Abi to come to Joburg. And the brother says, no, we better bring the child here now. We'll be with you. And the brother got me accommodation, is a flat in Hillbrow. So I stayed with Abi, and the brother take over and pay for schooling and all that, even if it wasn't that easy.
After years of cultivating his dreams, Betty had reaped the rewards of her hard work.
Seeing from where we're coming from, like from there up to here, I just saw a great things.
People keep on phoning and they ask, how do I feel about Abi? You know, I don't know. I think all this is the grace of God. Because they always says, if you raise the children alone, you don't direct them to the good direction. But these ones, I raised them alone, and this one has just given me a big surprise in his life. I feel proud.
Last year, we were also involved at Muduruni, to host a community event whereby we were giving back to the community. I also contributed through bodybuilding, demonstrated bodybuilding, and I shared my story with the parents. All the grade R to grade 12 were there, and we awarded all the top 10 students for each grade. So it's been so heartwarming, because it's nice to see a spark into that kid who's that you were once at that age. So when you give a little bit, those kids just smile, and you know what, and some of them, like they don't have a bread and butter, they have to sleep over yesterday's pap, and maybe and spinach, So I share those stories in a way that, regardless of the hardship, stay focused, because through that hardship you will learn that life will prepare you. Things don't come easy, but you will embrace life more when you are older and able to make decisions. But when you're young, take ownership of your life. You cannot blame your past, you cannot blame your parents. Hence, my mom, a domestic worker, but she raised 3 kids who are well off today.
These stories, without a doubt, show that nothing is beyond your reach. We may not all be given the same talents in life, but each of us has something special we were born with, just waiting to be ignited. That's how we come to the end of the program for today. Email us on bophelong@sabc.co.za and let us know how Mbali and Absalom's stories inspired you. Let's meet again next week, same time and place. Goodbye.